I have a situation where I need to drill a series of equally spaced holes in exact locations, and they need to be as precise as I can possibly get them. And when I say precise, I really do mean precise. Each one of these holes ends up needing two different size drill bits, one for the screw shank and the other one for the screw head, creating a custom countersink. The most precise way to get accurately spaced holes is with a drill press. With the help of a fence and a stop block, you can use a series of spacers that are cut to the exact spacing that you need. Drill a hole, add or remove a block, drill a hole, add or remove a block, and so on. Now, the kicker in my situation is that my drill press table is only about 21 inches wide, and the piece I need to cut is 38 inches long. We're gonna need to make a jig. After a whole lot of careful considerations, I came up with this design. It has an adjustable fence that moves forwards and backwards for different width materials, and an adjustable stop block at each end to adjust to different lengths. Now, because I like paying $6.25 a square foot for my plywood just to use it for jigs, I'm using 18 mil Baltic birch plywood. I'll cut one piece at 10 inches wide and one at 3 inches wide, both at 48 inches long, and then I'll put roughly an 1/8 inch chamfer on one of the bottom edges on that narrow strip. We'll call the wider strip the base and the narrow strip the fence. I'll set the router table up so the fence is 2 1/4 inches away from the back side of the bit, and I'll set the bit height to 3/8. Then I'll route a groove on the same side as the chamfer, but on the opposite face. Now I'll swap out the spiral bit for a slot cutting bit, set it to the same height of 3/8 of an inch, and make another pass, creating a T-slot. On the top face of the fence, I'll make crosshairs at 12 inches from each end and 1 inch from the back. Then I'll temporarily fasten them together, flush to the back side with double-sided tape. Then I can drill a 1/4 inch hole all the way through both pieces at those crosshairs. With the spiral down cut bit reinstalled, I can use the hole that I just drilled to locate where I need to route the T-slots in the base. I just slide the base over the router bit, square it up to my miter gauge, and while holding everything in place, I route my groove. After routing both ends of the base, I'll reinstall the slot cutter to 3/8 of an inch, and I cut the slots. To double check my work, I install a couple of T-bolts into the slots, drop the fence over the T-bolts, and put some knobs on, checking to make sure that everything is lined up correctly and that the fence actually does move front to back like it should. Now I have some cutoffs of ash from my assembly table build that are already milled to 3/4 of an inch thick, and that will make perfect stop block material. I ripped this cutoff to 1 inch wide and then cut it roughly in half. At the drill press, I'll drill a 1/4 inch hole in the center of each piece, 1/2 inch from the end, and about 1/4 of an inch deep. With my small parts crosscut sled and a flat top grind blade, I'll cut away 5/8 of an inch worth of material and 1 1/8 down in length. Now, I know there's a lot of measurements being thrown around here and that can be hard to keep track of. If you do want to make this jig, I made up a template for you guys with all the dimensions and spacings for you to go off of, which I'll link in the video description for those interested. The last step is to cut the stop blocks to their final length of 1 5/8 inches, clean up any rough edges, and give everything a light sanding. And then I'll draw a center line on the fence. All right, so the jig is complete. How does it work? The first thing is to secure it to the drill press table. Clamp the jig to the table, and then using a brad point bit or a Forstner bit as a guide, adjust the table left or right until the center of the bit lines up with the center line on the fence, and then lock the drill press table in place. Next, lay out the center of the length of material that you're drilling and how far forward or backward the holes need to be drilled. In this case, we're just going to say we want to be centered in both directions. Set the workpiece into the jig, lining up the 2 center marks, and adjust the fence forward or backwards until the center of the drill bit meets those crosshairs that you just made, and then tighten the fence down. Then, while holding the workpiece at that same spot, slide one of the stop blocks up to the end of the material and tighten it down. Now it's safe to change out your bit and set it to the correct depth. Now, let's say I want 8 holes evenly spaced every 4 inches. I'm going to cut a total of 4 spacers. One spacer will be half the distance between the holes, so 2 inches in this case, and the other 3 blocks will be cut to 4 inches, which is the full distance between the holes. It sounds confusing, but check this out. Set the 2-inch spacer between the stop block and the workpiece and drill your first hole. Then slide the workpiece down, put a 4-inch spacer in front of the spacer that's already there, and drill your second hole. Slide the workpiece down again, add another spacer to the line, and drill another hole. All your holes will be exactly 4 inches apart from each other. Now once you finish that half, take all the spacers out and butt the workpiece back up against that stop block. Insert the stop block on the other end of the fence and lock it down once it butts up against the material. Now you can remove the first stop block and go through the exact same process you did on the first half. Now, admittedly, while this one looks fine, it's actually off by about a 1/16 overall, and that's because I got rushed and I cut the 2-inch spacer just the slightest bit long. And while that would be perfectly satisfactory for most jobs, if you want it perfect, like this one here, take your time, double check your cuts.